The day after the audacious act in the royal court began with a tense silence over Zytheria. The palace corridors, normally filled with the hum of attendants and guards, were quiet. The nobles whispered behind closed doors, debating the meaning of what had happened. A human had taken Princess Lyra before the court, defying centuries of tradition, and no one could say what the king would do next. King Thalor sat in his private chamber, his thoughts heavy. He prided himself on order, discipline, and the careful balance of power that had kept Zytheria strong for centuries. Yet today his pride and authority had been challenged, not by another alien but by a human. The audacity of Jace Carter, the calm bravery of the man who had saved his daughter, left the king torn. Punish him? Honor him? Or find another solution that would preserve both tradition and reason? He rose and walked to the balcony overlooking the city. The twin suns glinted off the crystal towers, making the whole capital sparkle like a jewel. The beauty of the city was undeniable, but beauty did not solve the dilemma before him. He had to act wisely and quickly, because the rogue faction that had attacked his daughter still lingered in the shadows, seeking another opportunity. Meanwhile, Jace was escorted to a secure chamber within the palace. Despite the heavy guard outside the door, he remained calm. Humans, he knew, were judged not by their intentions alone, but by the results of their actions. He had acted with courage, saved a life, and prevented a potential political disaster. Now, all that remained was to explain the reasoning behind his decisions in a way that the Zytherian court could understand. Princess Lyra arrived shortly after, her steps light but confident. She did not look at Jace as if he were inferior or strange. She looked at him as an ally. "You've made the court uneasy," she said softly, "but you've also shown them something important, that courage does not belong to one species alone." Jace smiled faintly. "I only did what anyone would do in my position. The difference is I acted without hesitation. Hesitation can cost lives," Lyra nodded, "and that is why I support you. My father will see it eventually, though it may take time." Back in the royal court, the council gathered to deliberate. The chamber was filled with tension. Some nobles argued that humans could not be trusted to follow Zytherian laws or respect protocol. Others admitted, albeit reluctantly, that Jace's bravery and quick thinking had saved the princess and prevented a political disaster. One advisor, a tall Zytherian with crystalline armor, spoke sharply. "Your Majesty, this human defied our laws. He carried the princess before the court without permission. To allow this to go unpunished would set a dangerous precedent." Another council member, older and more thoughtful, countered. "And yet he saved the princess when your own guards could not. He demonstrated courage, intelligence, and loyalty. Should we punish someone who acted with honor? Perhaps our traditions must bend to reason." King Thalor listened carefully. Both arguments had merit. Tradition maintained order, but reason and courage maintained life. He had always taught his daughter to respect protocol, but he also valued judgment, bravery, and wisdom. He rose and addressed the council. "We face a choice. We can punish the human for his audacity, or we can recognize the value of his actions. Either path will change our court, and perhaps our kingdom forever. But the greater question is this: do we honor courage even from outsiders, or do we cling to tradition at the cost of life and wisdom?" A hush fell over the room. No one spoke immediately. Even the advisors who had opposed Jace's actions understood the weight of the king's words. Meanwhile, outside the court, the rogue faction plotted. Their attack had failed, but their intentions had not changed. They whispered to each other about the human who had thwarted them, the princess who had spoken in favor of him, and the king's indecision. They underestimated humans, as many Zytherians did, but humans often succeeded when others failed. Jace had shown that today. Inside the palace, Princess Lyra continued to support Jace quietly but firmly. She spoke to her father in private. "Father, I have lived in this palace my whole life. I have seen many nobles argue over protocol while ignoring danger. This human acted immediately, without fear, without hesitation. That is the kind of loyalty and courage that protects lives, not just traditions." The king's gaze softened. "You value bravery and wisdom over protocol, my daughter. You are your mother's child." Lyra smiled faintly. "And I have learned to recognize allies where they stand, not where they come from." At that moment, a messenger arrived with urgent news. The rogue faction had been located near the outer energy canals of the city. They were regrouping and preparing for another attack. The court had no time to debate endlessly. Action was required. King Thalor turned to Jace. Human, you acted boldly once. Now I ask you to act with strategy. Can you help us prevent another attack? Jace's mind raced. Humans often relied on adaptability and tactical thinking, rather than strict protocol. Yes, Your Majesty, he replied confidently. I need the palace guards to follow my plan exactly. And I need Princess Lyra's cooperation, as she can move through places the guards cannot. Lyra nodded. You have it. Jace quickly devised a plan. Using the palace's energy barriers, the canals, and the city's transport system, he organized a method to intercept the rogue faction before they could strike again. The guards, initially skeptical, followed his instructions. They had never seen such precise coordination before. As night fell over Zytheria, the operation began. Jace moved with the guards while Lyra used her knowledge of the palace and city to relay critical information. The rogue faction, confident after their partial success earlier in the day, did not anticipate human ingenuity combined with the princess's expertise. In the labyrinth of energy canals, Jace and the Zytherian guards cornered the rogue faction. Using calculated maneuvers, they disarmed the attackers, captured their leaders, and prevented further violence. The palace had been defended, the princess had been protected, and the city remained secure. When the operation ended, the court convened once more. King Thalor observed quietly as Jace reported the outcome. Your Majesty, Jace said, the threat has been neutralized. Lives have been saved and the kingdom is secure. Humans may not follow your traditions, but we act with loyalty, courage, and strategy. That is our way of honor. Princess Lyra stepped forward. The human is right, Father. Courage and loyalty are more important than protocol when lives are at stake. We owe him recognition, not punishment. The king regarded Jace carefully. The human had risked his life, saved his daughter, and neutralized a dangerous threat. Pride and tradition battled with reason and admiration. Finally he spoke. Jace Carter, human, you have acted with courage, intelligence, and loyalty. Your actions have protected my daughter and my kingdom. Therefore, I honor you as a protector of Zytheria. The court gasped. To honor a human in such a manner was unprecedented. Nobles whispered among themselves, some in shock, some in admiration. Jace bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, I do not seek honor. I acted because it was right. King Thalor smiled faintly. Then that is enough. Courage, loyalty, and wisdom are values that transcend species. Today you have proven that humans are capable of greatness. Princess Lyra's eyes shone with pride and relief. Thank you, she said quietly to Jace. Not only for saving me, but for showing my court that courage comes in many forms. As the court slowly dispersed, discussions shifted from outrage to admiration. The human had not only saved lives, but had changed perceptions. Humans, once seen as outsiders and weak, were now recognized as capable allies. In the days that followed, Jace was granted the title of Royal Guardian of Zytheria. He was allowed to act with authority in defense of the princess and the kingdom. More importantly, he gained the respect of the court and the people, not because he demanded it, but because he had earned it through courage and action. Princess Lyra and Jace developed a strong bond, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. They trained together, planned for the kingdom's defense, and worked to strengthen ties between humans and Zytherians. Where others saw differences, they saw opportunity and partnership. King Thalor watched these developments carefully. He understood that his daughter and the human soldier were shaping a new era for Zytheria. The kingdom could grow stronger by embracing courage and wisdom from unexpected sources, not just by adhering to ancient protocol. The rogue faction, now captured and imprisoned, became a warning to others. Humans and Zytherians alike had seen the results of daring and intelligence combined. They realized that underestimating outsiders could be dangerous. As the twin suns rose the following morning, the city of Zytheria sparkled with renewed energy. Guards patrolled with greater coordination. Advisors spoke more openly about collaboration, and the people whispered of the human who had changed their world. Jace stood beside Princess Lyra on the palace balcony, watching the city awaken. It's beautiful, he said quietly. Lyra smiled. It is, and now it will be stronger too. Not just because of walls and technology, but because of courage and trust. Jace nodded. Humans may be new here, but we can offer more than technology. We can offer loyalty, strategy, and courage. Things that matter as much as any crystal or energy barrier. Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "And together we will show them that. Today was only the beginning." The city of Xitheria stretched across the horizon like a jewel under twin suns. Towering spires of crystal glinted in shades of violet and gold, while glowing energy canals weaved between them like liquid light. It was a place of order, power, and pride. The Xitherians, tall and elegant beings with translucent skin that shimmered in the sunlight, ruled their world with strict rules and rigid hierarchy. At the heart of this grand city was the royal palace, a structure so immense that even the tallest Xitherian seemed small in comparison. And inside that palace lived Princess Lyra, the daughter of King Thalor, whose intellect and bravery were known throughout the galaxy. Jace Carter, a human captain from Earth, walked along the marble halls of the palace with a mixture of awe and careful caution. Humans had only recently arrived in this sector, and most aliens looked at them as primitive, a curiosity rather than equals. Jace had been part of the diplomatic mission, sent to establish trust between Earth and Xitheria, but he knew that first impressions could mean the difference between life and death in an alien world. He had heard stories about the royal family, about their power and influence, but he had also heard whispers about dangers that lurked even within the palace walls. Rogue factions, dissatisfied nobles, and radical groups sometimes tried to destabilize the kingdom. Humans often relied on technology and strategy, but here, in a world so advanced and proud, courage and quick thinking were just as important. The day began like any other ceremonial event in the palace. The grand hall was filled with Xitherian nobles, dignitaries, and the royal guards in their gleaming armor. Princess Lyra entered gracefully, her flowing robes reflecting the light of the twin suns outside. Her presence commanded respect. Even among humans, Jace felt a sense of admiration and caution. She was not only beautiful but radiated intelligence and confidence that few could match. Suddenly, the harmony of the ceremony shattered. A group of rogue aliens, masked and heavily armed, burst into the hall. Their weapons discharged bursts of energy that shattered crystal panels and sent nobles diving for cover. Chaos erupted. The guards tried to respond, but the intruders moved with precision, targeting the princess. Without hesitation, Jace acted. He was trained for situations like this, and even though the alien environment was foreign, his instincts did not fail. He grabbed the nearest energy shield from a fallen guard and charged toward the princess. The air crackled with tension and energy, but Jace's determination pushed him forward. "Princess Lyra, this way!" he shouted, his voice calm but urgent. Lyra did not hesitate. She trusted the human's decisiveness in that moment. Together, they moved toward the main entrance, dodging blasts of energy and overturned furniture. Jace felt the weight of the moment. Every step he took could determine not only his survival but hers. As they reached the court chamber, Jace realized that simply returning Lyra to the guards might not be enough. The rogue faction was skilled, and the guards were already struggling to contain them. He made a bold decision. Lifting Lyra into his arms, he moved swiftly into the center of the royal court, right before the assembly of nobles and the king himself. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned toward them. Jace's human audacity stunned the court. Carrying the princess before the king was a move no alien could have imagined, let alone allowed. King Thalor's eyes widened in shock, his pride and authority challenged in an instant. "Why have you brought her here, human?" the king demanded, his voice steady but edged with anger. Jace set Lyra down gently and took a deep breath. "Your Majesty, there is a threat to Princess Lyra. I saved her from an attack, and I brought her here to ensure her safety. The guards are unable to stop the rogue faction alone, and the danger is immediate." The court murmured among themselves. The nobles were divided. Some whispered that the human had no right to interfere with royal protocol, while others were curious about his courage and logic. Princess Lyra stepped forward, her eyes meeting her father's. "Father," she said, her voice calm but firm. "He acted quickly and wisely. He saved my life when others could not. I trust his judgment." The room erupted into whispers and gasps. For a princess to speak in favor of a human in the presence of the king was almost unheard of. But Lyra's tone carried authority, and it silenced the doubters. King Thalor's face was a mixture of surprise and contemplation. He was a ruler who valued protocol and tradition, but he also respected intelligence and courage. Here was a human who had acted decisively when others hesitated, and here was his daughter endorsing that action. "Explain yourself fully," the king commanded. And be precise. Do not waste words, human, Jace nodded. The rogue faction is a group that seeks to destabilize your kingdom. Their plan was to kidnap Princess Lyra during the ceremony and use her as leverage. If I had waited for permission or followed protocol, they would have succeeded. I acted to protect her life and the stability of your kingdom. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Humans may not always follow your traditions, but we act according to honor and logic. Sometimes that means making choices that others might fear to make. The court was silent again. Even the advisors, who were skeptical of humans, found themselves reconsidering their assumptions. Courage and reasoning were universal traits not confined to one species. Princess Lyra turned to face the court. This human's actions saved me. He did not act for glory or reward. He acted because it was the right thing to do. I stand with him, and I believe the court should recognize his courage, not punish it. The murmurs grew louder, now filled with uncertainty. Some nobles were outraged at what they saw as an insult to tradition, while others were intrigued by the bravery and decisiveness of the human. King Thalor's expression hardened. He had trained his daughter to respect protocol, to trust in the systems that maintained order, but now he faced a dilemma. His daughter had publicly endorsed a human who had defied his authority. The decision before him was not just about a human's actions. It was about the future of his kingdom and the values he wanted to uphold. He studied Jace carefully, noting the human's calm demeanor, the steady gaze, and the sense of duty in his every movement. There was no fear, only resolve. It was a quality rare even among Zetherians. The king finally spoke, his voice measured. You have acted boldly, human. Boldness can be strength, but it can also be recklessness. The court must consider the implications of your actions. For now, you will remain in the palace under observation. Your conduct will determine the next steps. Jace nodded once, understanding the gravity of the moment. He had not sought favor or reward. He had acted to save a life. Whatever the court decided, he knew he had done what was right. Princess Lyra's eyes met Jace's, a faint smile on her lips. She felt a sense of relief and gratitude. Here was a human who saw her not just as a princess, but as a person whose life mattered. She respected him more than she could put into words. The palace guards, once tense and uncertain, now looked at Jace with a mixture of admiration and wariness. He had challenged tradition and emerged unscathed, a feat that few aliens could accomplish. As the court proceedings continued, discussions grew heated. Some advisors argued that humans could never be trusted to respect Zetherian customs. Others insisted that courage and logic, even from outsiders, should be recognized and valued. King Thalor remained silent, observing the reactions of his court. His mind was torn between tradition and reason, pride and practicality. He knew that the human before him had changed something fundamental: the perception of outsiders and the limits of what could be expected from those willing to act bravely. Meanwhile, Lyra stood quietly, yet confidently, beside Jace. She felt a shift in the energy of the court, a new respect for the human who had risked everything to save her. Her father's hesitation was clear, but she also sensed that this moment could mark the beginning of a new understanding between humans and Zetherians. The sun outside dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystal floors. The court was at a standstill, caught between anger, curiosity, and the undeniable truth of Jace's actions. One thing was certain: nothing would be the same after today. In that grand hall of Zetheria, a human had taken bold action, a princess had spoken her mind, and a king had been left with no easy answer. The story of courage, honor, and unexpected alliances was only beginning. As Jace stood calmly, waiting for the court to decide, he knew one thing for certain: the humans had much to prove, but they also had much to offer. And sometimes the smallest species could make the largest impact. The whispers in the court continued, some in shock, some in admiration. And somewhere in the back of the hall, a shadowed figure of the rogue faction watched, realizing that their plan had failed, and that the humans were more capable than anyone had expected. The first part of the day had ended, but the consequences of Jace's actions were only just beginning. The princess, the king, and the court would never forget the human who had acted with courage when all others hesitated. And somewhere deep within the palace, a new bond was forming, one that could change the fate of Zetheria forever.